What is up, all my chicken people? We got some rain this morning. Anyway, welcome to 5 Acre Farms. I'm Luke. We got an interesting topic today. Chickens is kind of the gateway into, starting your farm, coming up with your own food. But then, next thing you know, you got quail and goats and a milk cow and a garden that's overgrown. But yeah, we need to talk about ducks today because I get asked all the time, people wanting to buy ducks from me, or they want information on ducks, and we need to make sure you guys are fully aware of what ducks really encompass. So ducks aren't just they aren't chickens. We'll just go with that. New feeder's doing good. Look at the chicken yard. I haven't opened up yet this morning because it was raining, so I figured I would keep everything closed up so they didn't come out here and just get completely wet. A couple guys haven't come out yet of the barn. Last night was quite the process. So the breeder pens, we've been putting the chicks in the breeder pens and then letting as they get big enough, we just let them out. Well, we need these breeder pens, not just for breeds here in the future, but we got more chicks in the brooder room that need to come out. So what does that mean? It means we need to empty out one of the breeder pens. So all these chickens you see behind me are all chickens that were in breeder pen number 8. And so last night, when you're moving 150 chickens from one place they sleep, which was pen 8, trying to move them into the barn here, that was a process because they wanted to sleep in their pen that they've slept in the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, not in the barn. So we need to get them trained to the barn, which is a nightmare. Anyway, let's open up these breeder pens. None of these chickens in here are breeds. These guys are breeders. All these chickens are just chicks that were growing out. So they are eager to come out. And there's some ducks back in there. So we're going to talk about the ducks. Anyway, this is another pen that needs to come out. And they're going to be just as eager to get out, because they like fresh green grass, getting out of there. So, yeah, now our chicken yard. I guess there's 2 ducks in that one too. The 4 ducks we hatched several weeks ago, we just put out here with the chicks because, ducks are fun to free range with your chickens. So why not? See, we still have a couple of the chickens that want back in their pen down here. But we're going to let that pen, dry out, neutralize. I'm going to put ag lime down in it and rototill it before we bring chicks out. We'll probably bring chicks out maybe tonight. We got a bunch of brooders full of chicks. So, but we need to talk about ducks because as cute and fluffy as they are, especially as chicks, they are an absolute mess. And you need to be prepared for ducks before you just get ducks. So let's talk about some of the things to think about. At least 5 things you need to think about ducks before diving right into them. Hey, I need to talk to you about your car's extended warranty. You can't run from your Lord and Jesus Savior. Don't leave your friend behind. So before we dive in too deep on if ducks are necessary or a good fit for your farm or things to consider, let's go down to the brooder room, and we need to talk about maybe incubating, hatching, and brooding ducks, because not every chance you're going to get, you're going to be able to find or buy full-grown ducks. So you need to kind of consider if you're going to start with ducklings or hatching eggs, or you're going to buy adult ducks. If you don't have the brooder set up, I would highly suggest buying full-grown ducks. That way you don't have the whole mess of brooding ducks. But I just happen to be walking by the mandarins. So mandarins are a duck. They're more of an exotic duck. But let's see, one of my hens hatched 4 little ducklings yesterday. Let's see how they're doing. There's all 4 of them playing in the water with mom. Hope you guys can see them back there. Nobody panic. Hope you guys can see them on the camera. Little mandarin ducks are the cutest little things. We'll show you guys those more as they get bigger. I don't want to make mom mad. Yeah, he doesn't care about ducks. But mandarins are a good example because they make pretty good mothers. So if you can get ducks that will go broody and sit on their own eggs and hatch them for you and raise them for you, that's the way to go. Because then they just raised outside and you don't have to worry about hatching them and brooding them. We've done that a couple times. We'll get over to our duck pond and explain a few things over there here in a little bit, and I'll explain why we don't have them hatch over there. But yeah, the mandarins, they're not like, if you're gonna add ducks to your farm, I wouldn't dive into exotics right away. They're a little more, they can fly, and they'll fly away and never to be seen again. So if you're wanting ducks for eggs or meat, stay away from exotics, because I only have mandarins because they're really pretty, really cool. Someday I want to have a super cool aviary where I can have a bunch of mandarins and wood ducks or whatever, some cool exotics, and they're a lot more expensive than your regular ducks. But if ducks can brood the eggs for you, or hatch the eggs for you and brood the chicks, that's the way to go. One breed of ducks, I guess we'll talk about breeds here after a while. Let's go into the brooder room here and I'll walk you through kind of things to think about when you're brooding ducks. It's going to be a little bit noisy in here with the audio, but quail, they're kind of the next gateway to after chickens. Yeah, they're a lot more simpler to raise than ducks, but you can raise hatch ducks in a normal incubator. They work great, but when it comes to brooding ducks, you don't want to brood ducks in like a wood brooder, because ducklings are extremely messy. So that's one thing to kind of start thinking about is, okay, if you're going to hatch ducks or buy ducks at the feed store, how are you going to brood them? Stay away from wood, and we use a rubber kind of stock tank, I guess, because we can hose it out, clean it out so much faster and easier. So that's I would stick with rubber or plastic if you're going to brood ducks or hatch ducks. One of the other things I would highly suggest getting is a specific water made just for ducks. So this has a lot deeper of a water trough, so the water level in this is way down here into the bottom, and when the ducks siphon the water and filter the water, they don't splash out near as much of it. Now some of them might try to get in it and swim around and get wet and then get the water out, but way better than a chick feeder or a chick water. As for a feeder, we just use a dish for ducks. They don't kick and scratch like a chick does, but they do transfer the water from the water over to the feed. So they have wet faces, and if they go into a feeder, they'll get the water or their wet mouths in there and they'll start clogging up the feeders. So we just use a dish. Seems to work. The good part is you don't have to brood chicks very long, or brood ducks very long, because they grow so dang fast. So you guys can keep them in here for 2 or 3 weeks, and if you're doing it in the summer, you can get them outside so much faster. So that's why we don't mind brooding ducks. We just don't go out of our way to do a whole lot of ducks. There's just not a huge market for ducks. But the good thing is people fall in love with ducks, and so they want more and more and more. And there's some things you need to consider before you get too carried away with ducks, because it's just not quite that easy. So from the brooder, those last 4 we took care of, we put them straight out with the chicks on the dirt, which it is what it is. Since we only had 4, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when we are brooding like 20 or 30 ducks at a time, our next step from the brooder, we like to use rabbit hutches. And I picked these up at an auction. I'm sure you could build some or get something similar. But these are awesome because they still have a place for the ducks to go in when it's raining. They really don't care about getting rained on, but they can go in there to sleep. I can put a rubber dish in here for water. They can jump in and swim around and make a big old mess. And yeah, these things work great for getting ducklings outside for a couple weeks before you cut them loose onto your farm. So not a must-have, but it does work. So let's go over here to the duck pond and really talk about some things, the top 5 things I think you guys need to know before getting into duck. So while we're walking over here, in the brooder, I didn't really say it, but for duck feed you can use a chick crumble, all flock crumble, made for chicks. We still feed our chicks medicated feed. Some steer away from medicated feed for waterfowl, but we found that we haven't had any die because of medicated feed. It's the same feed we use for all the chicks and turkeys and meat birds, 22% broiler from our local co-op. Once they get outside, at least at a young age, they stay on that chick crumble. They don't need near as high of a protein as your chicks do, so you can get away with an 18% crumble for chick grower. But once they get big enough or full grown, you can really get them into just put them on layer pellets or an all flock. So that's something I need to mention for feed wise is all of my ducks and geese just get typical layer pellets, 20% layer pellets, the same as the laying hens. So this is my duck yard, duck pen. It's not my ideal wants and needs for a duck yard, but you see we do have a couple escapees. They can figure out how to get out, but they never figure out how to get back in. We have our one angry goose. Yeah, they're always angry. Geese is a whole nother video. But we got so here in the duck yard, or the duck pen, I should call it. When we moved out here, we just kind of made a quick pen with all-purpose cattle panels, and we dug a pond. Now, I know not everybody has access to digging a pond. We had our neighbor come over with a mini excavator and dug a pond for us. We got a bunch of eggs we need to collect. They're all making nests in our brush pile, which is why we put this little brush pile in here, so they can nest. Hopefully some of them maybe start sitting on eggs. We've put several different structures in here. One of them has collapsed, a couple dog houses, a couple other things. They have this whole grain bin too, and I'll show you that here in a second. But they can lay there and make a nest. But yeah, so we dug this pond. This pond was a much smaller pond when we started with ducks. And if you've ever raised ducks, then you know where I'm coming from. They will just sit around and eat at the mud in the bank, filtering the mud, looking for food and whatever, and micro invertebrates and whatever. So this pond, when it started, was probably 15 feet long by 10 feet wide and 6 foot deep. Now it's 3 times that, but it's only like 2 foot deep. So unfortunately, because this fence was not really close to the water's edge. So when we rebuild this duck pond, we're actually going to put nice woven wire 2x4 fence all around it, and then get in here with the mini and clean this out, and then we'll probably put rock around the bank so the ducks can't keep making it bigger and bigger. So you don't, if you're getting ducks, don't think you have to have a pond. Now, would I suggest it? Yes. If you already have a pond, perfect. We'll talk about predators here in a second. But you can get away with like kiddie pool that you can buy at Walmart. Just know you're going to be cleaning out your water dishes or your kiddie pool almost every day. And whenever you dump that water out, the ducks would rather play in that water on the ground than the fresh water in the pool. So they just turn that into a bigger and bigger mess on the ground. So consider that when you have a water source, you want to be able to clean it out. We have our hose. You can see it on the ground over there. We run our hose in here every week, a couple times a week sometimes, and it flushes all the water out the side of the pond. Not all of it, but it keeps bringing fresh water in and poopy water out. So that's one thing to consider. Right now we are in the middle of summer, so our pond looks a little green. It helps with vegetation. You can see some of the eggs along the bank. Ducks don't lay in nesting boxes, which is one of the most frustrating things, but I mean, what do you expect? They're a duck. They just lay wherever. Sometimes they'll lay in a designated spot that you make for them, but not always. A lot of times they'll just randomly lay eggs wherever they want, and then you have dirty eggs and muddy eggs, and you're going to need to wash the eggs, and then you have to refrigerate the eggs, and that's the whole process. But one of the biggest things you need to worry about when you're starting ducks, number one, is your water. Pond, kiddie pool, black rubber tub, whatever you're going to feed your ducks in, plan on washing it out and cleaning it out all the time and plan on them making a mess. That's the one thing I try to warn people before they get into ducks, is just know that ducks are extremely messy, and they have to have water deep enough they can stick their nostrils under the water so they can clean out their beak, and they just like to play in the water. They like to splash in the water. They like to get wet. They don't mind getting rained on, which is one nice thing about ducks. Very rarely do they get sick and die. Now, when we had bird flu, we had 50 ducks, and we only lost 2 ducks to bird flu when we lost 500 or 600 chickens to bird flu. Ducks can get sick and recover from it. Bird flu or avian influenza is about one of the only sicknesses that you really got to worry about with ducks. And even then, they can get it and survive. But any other sickness, their immune system is just so built up living out in the cold and the wet. It could be negative 20 degrees and the ducks are still just acting like it's just another day on the farm. So that's one great thing about ducks, is they are so minimal maintenance. If you have a setup with a pond, just keep them food, and they really don't need, I mean, they have an awesome shelter back here, but they very rarely go in it. They'd rather sit out here and play in the water and get rained on. Even when we got that big hailstorm, we didn't lose a single duck or goose to hail. They can just tuck their heads in and just take it. So they have access to get away from it, but they just don't. Number 2 thing to consider with ducks is predators. So if you have a predator issue with your chickens, you're really going to have a predator issue with your ducks, because I tell you what, chickens are way faster than ducks. Now, the only thing my ducks got going for me when it comes to predators is they have a pond to get into the middle of. So we usually don't have coyote issues with our ducks, because the coyotes really aren't getting through this fence. Like the 2 that are out, we'll have to get those guys back in before dark, because if they're sitting out here running along the fence, coyotes, they don't have a problem coming up here into the yard, so, and snagging a nice fresh duck. They don't have anything against a dark meat. I'm sure they'd probably rather have a chicken, but chickens are a lot harder to catch than a duck. Ducks are just easy pickings, especially ours, because they can't fly. So there are some ducks, like Muscovies, we'll talk about them in a second, but they can fly. But a lot of your domesticated ducks are not breeds that can just fly away from a predator. So our biggest predator is raccoons out here. But most of the time, the raccoons, possums, skunks, whatever, they're coming to eat the duck eggs. Like a raccoon can easily get into this pen. We don't have a top on it. Putting a top on this pen would be extremely difficult with the trees in here. We used to, whenever we first built this, we'd run all the ducks in every single night into the grain silo. And it just got to a point where we weren't losing ducks, so we leave the grain silo open and don't have to worry about predators. Like I said, the biggest predator we have is the raccoons and possums, and like I said, they're just coming to get the eggs. So we oftentimes will leave 2 or 3 eggs every day somewhere. That way, if a coon or something does get in there, they can they'll kind of have a free meal. But the good thing is they're close to the house. They make a lot of noise when predators come around. So if you hear your ducks going crazy in the middle of the night, there's probably something out there. And the geese, they're really noisy. So they do a really good job of letting everybody know that something, or a predator or something, is getting after the pen or getting after the eggs. But if you don't have a pond, I would suggest blocking your ducks up at night, because they're going to go first. And if you free range your ducks and you have daytime predators like foxes or something, most likely the ducks are going to go first. So things to consider when it comes to predators and ducks. We talked about their housing just a little bit. That's number 3 on the list, is housing, bedding, nesting. We have a couple, like a dog house and another little coop thing we made for chicks when we first started. We use these awning covers for windows from old houses. We'll put straw. We use straw when it comes to ducks. Man, that lady's noisy. Let's go see what she's doing. But our main housing for these guys is the grain silo. What you got going on in here? Huh? Alright, well, we'll leave you be, I promise. So, that lady, I don't know if she's wanting to make a nest in there or what, but you can see it. We put a full bale of straw in there. We just take from that bale and put it in certain spots. Usually every time it rains, we'll freshen up their areas. They make their nesting areas so wet and nasty because they're always going in and out of the water. So, something to consider. They make their bedding wet and nasty. They make everything wet and nasty. They poop anywhere. It's always wet, slimy, nasty poop. It's never just like a little chicken clump or a turkey clump. It's always wet and runny. So, and they poop a lot. So, anyway, bedding. We use straw. You can use wood chips, but they're gonna make a mess of it. So, whatever you use, expect to clean it up. So you've convinced yourself or your spouse you need ducks. Number 4 on the list is what kind of ducks? That's kind of the question is, you know, all these domestic ducks will lay eggs. So they don't lay 365 days a year like a chicken. So keep that in mind. They usually start in the spring and end in the late summer, early fall. There are different breeds that produce more eggs than others. And some breeds are really good at being mothers and hatching eggs. And some breeds are kind of like the Cornish cross. They're just kind of made for meat. But the main breeds you're going to see in the feed stores are like pekins, which are all white. They're kind of a dual purpose breed. We don't run pekins, but a lot of people do. Nothing wrong with them. They're just all white. Predators usually pick them off first because they're fat and slow, but they're fat because a lot of people like to, if you like to eat ducks, pekins are usually the ducks you guys are eating. You can eat about any duck. Outside of pekins, you're going to see like khaki Campbells, silver apple yards. Those are both great egg layers. None of these ducks are flighty ducks or flying ducks. Welsh harlequins, we ran those for a lot of years. There's a black-bellied whistling duck flying over. That's a wild duck. We run blue Swedish and black Swedish. We find that the color, anything blue usually sells better. So they are one breed that takes a little bit longer to tell males from females. Your silver apple yards, your Welsh harlequins. Some of your duck breeds, the males look different than the females, so it's easy to sex them by color. But we went with the Swedish ducks because they can be a dual purpose bird. They're a really hardy bird, and they have that blue lavender color, which seems to sell better. But anyway, you have Indian runner ducks, which the ones that stand up really tall. They're really fun. We ran those for a long time. Those are just a fun duck because they stay in a group all the time and they run around like they're walking on two legs like a human. A lot of people use those to train cattle dogs or herding dogs, but they're egg layers too. These guys lay really well for us, but if you're really looking for the most egg production you possibly can, usually the khaki Campbells. There's also the crested ducks. And then all these ducks can pretty much breed with other species of ducks, so you don't have to have all the same breed. One duck we don't have on the farm, we never really don't have a desire to have, is the Muscovy. Muscovy is a huge duck. It flies really well if you don't clip their wings. They'll sleep in your trees, on top of your barns. They usually like to sleep off the ground. But the best part about Muscovies is they are hatching machines and they're laying machines. So they lay a bigger duck egg, and they'll make a clutch of 20 eggs, and they'll sit on them and hatch 18, 19 of them. So you can stick chicken eggs underneath them, or peacock eggs underneath them, or turkey eggs underneath them, and they'll hatch them. They are just hatching machines, and they're really good mothers. So if they do hatch all their own little ducklings, they do a really good job of keeping them alive. So, and if you're really looking for a dual purpose bird, supposedly they're the best eating duck, domestic duck you can get a hold of. You don't see Muscovies a whole lot at your hatcheries and your feed stores. You kind of just got to find some people that raise them. You almost always see them at auctions, but they're a messy duck too, but they're just a lot bigger, supposedly tastier duck. I've never eaten them, so I can't give you that experience. So those are your breeds. That's number 4 on the list. So just pick a breed that really suits your purpose on what you're wanting on the farm, either eggs, meat, just having a duck on the farm. I think some of the prettiest ducks are these blue Swedish, Welsh Harlequin, silver Appleyards. You have Ruins too, which are a big mallard looking duck. What's the other one? Can't remember the other one. Anyway, lots of different breeds. Go find one that fits what you're looking for. So are ducks compatible? Number 5. Are they going to get along with all your chickens? Because if you already have chickens and you're thinking about ducks, do they get along well together? Do they conflict with each other? Will your ducks harass your chickens? That's one thing a lot of people think about. Let me see if I can find these ducks over here. We have 4 ducks in here in the chicken yard. And like I said, these are young ducks. So, but it's hard to tell male from females at this age. They're just kind of goofy. But they get along just fine with chickens. The good thing about ducks is if you put enough time into ducks, especially if you hatch them, kind of like geese, they will see you as their mom or dad. They will accept you as their caregiver. If you spend an hour a day with them when they're little, they will come running to you and they'll be very affectionate. You don't see that near as much in chickens, but ducks and geese, they can just be extremely affectionate if you put in the time with them when they're little. But they do get along with chickens just fine. One thing I need to mention is if you get ducks, and it's hard when you're hatching them to kind of figure out what you have, but males can get fairly aggressive toward females, not toward your chickens. Now they will harass a chicken and try to breed a chicken, but they can get extremely aggressive toward other ducks. So I think the number is like 7 or 8 females to 1 male. They breed a lot and fairly aggressive. So if you have too many males, you need to get rid of males, or get more females. So things to consider, and you'll notice pretty quick when you get going. Here's the ducks they're hanging out in the water dish over there. See if I can't zoom in on them. They love to be in the water. So, things to consider if you're running a rubber dish as your only source of water, the ducks are going to get in it and make an absolute mess out of it. Out here we have about 10 of these water dishes, as well as their 5-gallon waters, which when we had the ducks in one of the breeder pens locked up, those 4 ducks would drain one of those 5-gallon water dishes every day, and they would just make a mess. So you want to make sure they always have water, especially when they're little ducklings, because they will drown themselves over drinking. If they dang nap. If you cut them off of water, you need to reintroduce that water slowly, because they will drink and drink and drink and drink. Just don't let them run out of water. You don't have to have that problem, but they will make a mess in it. So, but anyway, compatibility with chickens, they get along just fine. They're super fun to watch. They are extremely goofy, but other than that, you can definitely run your chickens and ducks together. They say they don't need as much calcium in their feed, so if you're going to have several ducks, you can bring it down to like an 18% all flock, and go from there, and even bump it down even farther in the winter when they're not laying. But they're good at grazing. A lot of people like to get ducks and put them in their garden because they eat a lot of bugs. They're really good at eating bugs. They're really good at foraging. If you put them on a pond that has a lot of algae, duckweed, moss, they're really good at helping clean out a pond and stirring it up and putting oxygen back into the pond. So things to consider. A few odd and end things to think about outside of those 5 reasons. Ducks can be kind of loud, especially when you have a bunch of them. Not as loud as a rooster, but they can be kind of noisy. I guess that may be one of the reasons why you're not supposed to have them in city limits. A lot of cities don't like you having ducks. The good thing is, if you only have 1 or 2, they really don't make a ton of noise. But if you're allowed to have chickens, but not allowed to have ducks, well, ducks don't sound like chickens. So your neighbors will catch on pretty quick when they start hearing a quack, and not a chicken. So things to consider. They do eat about 1/4 of a cup to 1/3 of or 1/4 of a pound to 1/3 of a pound of food a day. So consider that. But if you let them out to free range like what we do here, obviously my ducks in my duck yard don't free range, because they just make a mess. I'm just going to let them have their area that they can destroy. I don't want them destroying the whole farm. So, is my food bill a little higher on the ducks? Yeah. The good thing is about duck eggs are healthier for you, healthier option for you. So a lot of people know that, and they will sell their duck eggs. You can sell them for more than chicken eggs. So we usually sell duck eggs for about $5 to $6 a dozen, when chicken eggs are $3 to $4 a dozen. What are you guys selling duck eggs for? Or what are duck eggs going in your area? Sometimes you don't see a lot of duck eggs in the grocery store, so a lot of people like them. They're really good to bake with. They got a bigger yolk, a creamier yolk, more nutrition. They are just great for baking purposes. So a lot of families that like to bake a lot or cook a lot really like the duck eggs. You can see the little 4 ducks. That one barred rock is just kind of pushing them around, but they are just going to town on the pigweed. They get pushed around a little more by the chickens. Once they get bigger, that might not be the case. But ducks are very, very gentle creatures, super cute. They grow up fast though. They're cute until they're making a mess out of everything. But anyway, those are 5 things to consider before getting ducks. I hope you guys take all that into consideration. Some of you guys are just, they're the cutest little things in the feed store, I know that, but just know what you're getting into before you dive head first into them. I wish I knew some of these things before I got ducks. You know, I would see ducks. The only reason I got into ducks is because I was getting so many messages from customers when we were selling a bunch of birds. They were like, well, I want to buy. We were the farm. We were the poultry farm that everybody came to. So everybody that we sold birds to, they wanted chickens, they wanted ducks, they wanted geese, they wanted quail, they wanted us to be their one location to buy all their poultry. And so that's the only reason we really added ducks to our farm, was to have one more source of income selling duck eggs or ducklings or adult ducks. What the value of an adult duck is, usually hens. If I'm selling them from my farm, I get 25 a piece for them. Drakes, I usually get 10 bucks a piece for. So maybe that's different where you guys are at, but they're very comparable to a chicken. I think they should be worth more, but that's about the going market because they're just such a mess to brood and raise that I think it takes a lot more to get into them. The good thing is, if you hatch 20 ducklings, if they make it past the first day, you're probably going to have 20 ducks. Like, they usually don't die. So hopefully that helps you guys out making your decision if ducks are something you want on the farm. But that's all we really have for this video. Trying to get back into more informative videos, but yeah, if there's a certain topic or a certain breed or something else you want me to talk about that I have experience with, then comment down below and we'll go from there. We're wanting to get back more into making educational content, which is what we built the channel on. The problem is I've already made a ton of videos on this education stuff, so if you're looking for a certain topic, don't be afraid to go back and look at some of our other videos, because we may have already talked about it. We've talked a lot about incubating and brooding and meat birds and all the things chickens and quail. So, but we want to bring you guys more. So if you're new to the channel, thanks for watching, especially all the way to the end. Hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 100,000, and we're trying to grow this channel into something great. So thank you guys for watching. You know the deal. We love you guys. Don't haggle with your egg supplier. Buy your chicks local, and we'll see you guys on the next one.